The shelter was loud, barking, whining, the metallic clang of kennel doors. But in the farthest corner, away from the noise, lay Max. 19 years old. His fur, once deep and rich, was now a patchwork of silver and white. His eyes, clouded but still warm, followed every passerby, not with excitement, but with quiet hope. For almost a year, Max had watched hundreds of dogs leave through those shelter doors, while his kennel stayed empty. No one wanted an old dog. No one wanted him. Each day, he would lift his head when footsteps echoed down the hall. Each day, he would lie back down when those footsteps faded away. 19 years. That number scared people. They saw weakness, fragility, and ending. But they didn't see what Max still had to give. They didn't see the heart that still beat for companionship. They didn't see the quiet loyalty waiting behind those tired eyes. And then, on a rainy afternoon when adoption visits were rare, the door opened. A woman stepped inside, dripping from the storm, carrying a bag of donations. She wasn't looking for a dog. She wasn't expecting her life to change. But the moment she walked past Max's kennel, he lifted his head, and their eyes met. Before the shelter, Max had a life, a home, a family. He wasn't just a dog. He was the shadow following a little boy to school, the patient listener to bedtime stories, the silent guardian who waited at the window until the front door opened each evening. For years, Max lived for his people. Through summer afternoons chasing frisbees and quiet winter nights curled up by the fire, he was there, always there. But time, it moves differently for dogs. One day, the boy Max once walked to school was grown. The house wasn't as full anymore, and Max, now slower, with stiff joints and a softer bark, spent more time resting than running. Then life took a harder turn. The family faced challenges no one saw coming. Financial struggles, health problems. Difficult choices had to be made. And one morning, Max found himself sitting in the back of a car, heading somewhere unfamiliar. The shelter. The first night, there was the hardest. The cold concrete floor, the echo of other dogs barking for attention. Max didn't bark. He didn't cry. He simply lay down, his head on his paws, waiting for a familiar voice that never came. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Younger dogs came and went, tails wagging as they left with new families. Max stayed. Shelter visitors would pause in front of his kennel, read the little card on the door, and their faces would soften, then shake with regret. 19 years old. Too fragile, too late. The staff loved him. They would bring him soft blankets, extra treats, gentle pats. But they couldn't give him what he truly needed, a home. And still, Max waited. Every morning, his ears would perk when the main door opened. Every evening, his head would lower again when no one came for him. Until that rainy afternoon. The woman hadn't planned to stop. She was just there to drop off blankets and old towels for the shelter. Her schedule was tight, and the rain was coming down harder by the minute. But as she walked past the rows of kennels, something made her pause. It wasn't barking. Max didn't bark. It wasn't wagging. His tail stayed still. It was his eyes. They weren't begging. They weren't desperate. They were quiet, tired, but steady. The kind of eyes that had seen both joy and loss, and still, somehow, held hope. She took a step closer, crouching down to his level. "Hey there, old man," she whispered. Max lifted his head slowly, as if every movement took a bit of effort. His ears tilted forward just slightly, a flicker of interest in a world that had long passed him by. The shelter volunteer walked over. "That's Max," she said softly. 19 years old. Been here almost a year now. The woman's eyebrows knit together. 19. The volunteer nodded. "He's a sweet boy. Doesn't ask for much. But most people want puppies. Or at least younger dogs. They see his age and..." She let the sentence hang. The woman looked back at Max. His fur was thin in places, his frame lean, but there was dignity in the way he sat. He wasn't broken, just waiting. She placed her hand on the kennel bars. Max leaned forward, just enough for his nose to touch her fingers. Something stirred inside her, a feeling she couldn't quite name, but couldn't ignore. Still, she hesitated. Her apartment was small, her work hours long, and 19 was so close to goodbye. But as she turned to leave, She glanced back one last time. Max hadn't moved. He just watched her go, his gaze following her until she disappeared from sight. That look stayed with her all night. And by morning she knew. The next day, the shelter doors swung open again. The volunteers looked up, surprised. The woman was back. But this time, she wasn't carrying blankets. She was carrying paperwork. "I'm here for Max," she said, her voice steady but her hands trembling just slightly. The volunteer blinked. Are you sure?" The woman nodded. "Yes, he's coming home with me." Max was lying in his kennel, head resting on his paws, when she appeared again. For a moment, it was as if he thought he was dreaming. But then the door opened, and the cold metal barrier that had separated them was gone. The woman crouched down, holding out her hand. "Come on, old man," she whispered. Max stood slowly, his joints stiff, and walked toward her. No rush, no bounce. But with every step, his tail began to sway, faint at first, then stronger. When they reached the lobby, the rain had stopped. The woman clipped on a new collar, soft leather, with a shiny tag that read, Max. And as they stepped out into the fresh air, something in him changed. His head lifted a little higher. His ears perked. For the first time in a long time, the world beyond the shelter walls was his again. In the car, Max curled into the seat beside her. She kept one hand on the wheel and the other gently resting on his back. No words were needed. He knew. Somehow, he knew this was not just a car ride. This was the beginning of his last, best chapter. The first few days in his new home were quiet. Max explored at his own pace, sniffing each corner, padding slowly across soft rugs he hadn't felt in years. The woman set up a cozy bed by the window, where sunlight spilled in every morning. But it was more than comfort he found, it was belonging. In the evenings, she'd sit on the couch, reading or sipping tea, while Max lay beside her with his head resting on her lap. Sometimes, she'd feel his breathing deepen and know he'd drifted into a peaceful sleep. It was the kind of peace that only comes when you're finally safe. Neighbors stopped by to meet him. Children knelt down to stroke his fur. Every person who looked into Max's eyes could feel it, the quiet gratitude, the deep connection that comes when love is given without condition. Weeks passed. Max's step grew lighter, his tail wagged more often, and sometimes, in the park, he even broke into a gentle trot. Yes, 19 years was old, but it wasn't the end. For Max, it was a second chance, one last chapter filled with love, warmth, and dignity. And for the woman, it was a reminder that sometimes the best relationships are the ones you never planned for. Because love doesn't check a birth date. Love doesn't care about time left. Love cares about today. And for every old, overlooked animal sitting in a shelter, today could be the day their life changes forever, if someone just takes the chance. If Max's story touched your heart, please share it, because somewhere out there, another dog is waiting. And maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for you.